everybody. Welcome to episode 68 of the Online Tennis Podcast. It's me, Jack, as always, and I am joined by Damian Kust. How are you, Damian?
Great. Excited to talk about the four events that we've had. I think I maybe even said it last time, but I don't usually get a chance to talk about the main tour that much. So that's why I'm even more excited for this because it's just something I don't do that often.
Fair enough. I actually, there are a few things that will come up that will allow you to branch into your normal area of expertise for sure. We've got a few up and comers that we're going to talk about, but mainly, yes, there's been some very interesting main story narratives, whatever you want to call it, this week with Swiatek and Krejcikova in Ostrava, and then of course ATP Astana. We had a bunch of stories there with Djokovic and Medvedev. ATP Tokyo, we're going to talk about that too. Fritz and Tiafoe in the final there. And finally, the WTA event in Monastir in Tunisia, where Jabeur unfortunately didn't win the title, but we had Elise Mertens picking up a bit of form. Damien, have you got a preference on where you'd like to start?
Not really. It's your call.
Not really. Okay, in that case, we'll start with the ATP event in Tokyo, if you don't mind.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to talk about, which we won't talk about for too long, but it's probably the match that I wanted to talk about this week that isn't a final, isn't a semi-final, just kind of went under the radar maybe for people. One that might be worth watching the highlights back for, just in case you didn't see it. A great escape from Miomir Kecmanovic against Dan Evans. Did you get to see any of that?
No,
Anyway.
not at all. Oh, yeah. Okay.
No.
Yeah. Of course, I saw the highlights of that. That winner, of course. Yeah, I did not. I did not watch it at the time. I watched some pretty detailed highlights of it, but no, not. I suppose it must have been
That's
superb to follow it while it was going on.
Yeah, it was absolutely jaw dropping. I thought Dan had it in the bag. Fortunately, not as big a fan of Dan Evans as maybe somebody from Great
Mm-hmm.
Britain would normally be, so I wasn't totally heartbroken by this one. But I mean, he was 5-4 up, 40 love up, 3 match points in a row. Two of them return winners from Kecmanovic, by the way. But of course, they weren't the best match point saves. You did touch on it there. There was a match point save with a tweener passing shot. It was
Yeah.
almost a tweener passing shot. I should say Dan actually got it back. It was great. Yeah, just one to watch back. As David said, you probably only need to see the highlights to get an idea of what happened. Very, very entertaining. Please give it a watch. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the final very quickly. I don't have loads to say about this one, to be honest. The main thing I want to talk about is that record of Tiafoe's being broken, basically. 13 tie breaks going into this match in a row, and Taylor Fritz able to win 2 on the bounce. Taylor Fritz, obviously, one of the best players of this year, now number 7 in the race, number 8 in the rankings. Tiafoe, in fairness, finals record not the best. He's now lost 4 on the bounce. Won his first one back in 2018, so it's been 4 years without a title, which is mental when you think about it. What do you think maybe made him lose here? Do you think it was? I don't know how much you saw first, Damien. Possibly you didn't see too much. I kind of just watched the tie breaks back, basically. But I'm interested to hear your opinion on it. Do you think this was a head-to-head thing? Do you think this was a final thing? Or do you think that Fritz had some sort of crazy formula in the tie breaks to somehow unstick Tiafoe with his crazy
Yeah, I
record?
mean, as you said, there was a crazy record, but it was never going to last, right? At some point, it had to be broken. Even Bernabé Zapata Miralles was close to breaking it in the second round. What went wrong here? I'm honestly not sure. I think Fritz was just sort of all week. He was playing this. Well, at the beginning, he wasn't able to play his best because of COVID, because of the isolation that he had to.
It's wild,
Yeah,
I
and
know.
and I think this sort
You
of.
should point out to
Huh?
listeners it was only Wednesday he
Yeah,
got out of it, right?
Wednesday, and then he played Duckworth. Yeah, so it was really crazy, and I think in a way it made him very strong. Like after he got through these two, the first 2 rounds, then probably got a big helping hand thanks to Kyrgios withdrawing, because well, who knows if he would have won. And also, after COVID, after isolation, his fitness was probably not as great as it would have been usually. So I think having a walkover was especially important after struggling with Duckworth and Moria. And I think this just, mentally, this is an experience that really makes a person be clutch somehow. And in both matches, actually, against Fritz, against Shapovalov and against Tiafoe, because in the third set against Chapo, he was also down a break, right? and from then that point onwards, he suddenly
Yeah.
improved, and basically then gave him a chance up until the end. So I think that this sort of story, as impressive, of course, as it is that he won a title after that, I think it also really helped him from a purely mental standpoint. And yeah, and Fritz has totally been I don't know, an elite player since maybe even last year, but definitely since the beginning of 2022. Of course, you could sort of complain about his clay
Yeah.
season. It's always going to be a weakness of his. It's just not fixable. Although with better movement, and he's improved that a lot, it possibly can give him some results in the future. And obviously, the U.S. Open round one loss will stink. But other than that, he's been an absolutely top player this year, and it would be great to see him at the ATP finals, honestly, because indoors he can totally have a chance at a few guys there.
Definitely, yeah. You'd have a pretty decent chance of beating quite a few players,
Yeah,
Tsitsipas and certainly Rublev, players like that for sure, and maybe enough to reach the final. Who knows? But yeah, on the tiebreak record, I would just dispel the notion that he came up with anything crazy. I think it was quite coincidental that Tiafoe won 13
yeah,
tiebreaks on
of
the
course
bounce,
it
quite
was.
honestly, because that's a crazy record. Yeah, obviously a few things have to fall your way. He was particularly clutch in some matches. The Tsitsipas win in the Oliver Cup, for example, comes to mind. But yeah, generally, yeah, Tiafoe. Actually, I would say Fritz is, despite Tiafoe having the recency bias, I guess, under his belt, Fritz probably has been playing better tennis overall, and he deserved to win this one for me. I would like to move on to the WTA event in Ostrava.
Yeah, sure.
First thing I'd like to talk about, a newcomer that players might not be aware of, just a little bit of background on her. Alycia Parks defeated Karolina Pliskova and Maria Sakkari back to back. Great American player with an amazing serve. Seriously good. I'd like to see that in context of other serves, but we don't quite have enough stats on it yet to gauge a reasonable opinion on it, I suppose. But it looks fantastic. It's really big. Happy to come into the net, as soon as she can. She's really reliable approach shots and long levers, giving her plenty of options when she gets up there, which is obviously quite refreshing for WTA players. Or singles players, I should say. 59 winners as well in one match. Christ, that was against Sakkari. Sakkari really been blown off the court there. She said indoor hard court is her strength, so she might be able to play another few events and this year and make an impact. At the same time, quite up and down. I would say one of those players that's definitely got a high peak and maybe not a high peak. I guess maybe just not the most reliable return game. So she could lose matches to anybody in some ways and maybe grab the odd upset against anybody as well, depending on the matchup. Yeah, have you seen any of her
Yeah.
yet, Damien? Got an
Yeah,
opinion on her?
for a long while, honestly, she was just the name that I don't know if you remember that drama video from 2019 when after a match at 60K, I think,
Yeah.
Katrin Sebov and Alycia Parks, they sort of it got physical, let's say that. And for a while I mostly knew her from that, but yeah, at some point I got to see her before this week, that's for sure. Yeah, and as you said, the serve was just always standing out. And the match you mentioned against Sakkari, I can't remember the exact statistic for the Greek, but as you said, Parks had 59 winners and Sakkari had like 8 or 10, something like that. And she's usually she's usually a very aggressive player, right? So it really tells you, it really shows you how what the dynamics in this matchup were. And it's Parks is just one of the girls, I think, who have an extremely high ceiling but also a very low floor. Some days you're just gonna run into her and she's gonna spray 80
Yeah.
errors. 80, of course, is a bit harsh. I mean, it would have to be a long free setter, but sometimes and
Yeah.
sometimes you're just gonna come out on the court against her and she's playing like against Pliskova or Sakkari. Pretty wild that she got these two back to back, because before that
Yeah.
she only had that one big win against Qinwen Zheng in Berlin earlier this year. But if we remember back to, like, grass
Yeah.
obviously suits her too because of the huge serve. But Qin Zheng was also very uncomfortable on grass before Wimbledon. I think she had a very decent Wimbledon, but before that she had like a couple. The loss against Parks wasn't the only one where she looked like Kaunas on grass before she learned her way. So it certainly wasn't
Yeah,
as
yeah.
impressive, or nowhere near as impressive as beating Pliskova and Sakkari back to back. Very exciting. I saw some Serena comparisons, which are a bit wild, of course. I don't know. Every single African American tennis player. Sorry, yeah, African American tennis player from the states that comes out.
No, it's
Uh,
fair. It's fair.
it's compared to Serena. It happened with Corey Goff, of course. It happened with Parks. I don't know. It makes no sense, but obviously, yeah, fantastic serve. The game is so inconsistent that it's hard to really imagine her, I don't know, winning slams or something. But it would be cool to have
Yeah,
a player like that in the top 100, have her on the main tour more often. Because of what we saw in
yeah,
Ostrava. She's just capable of beating anyone on her day.
yeah. Exactly. I agree. So it'd be fun to see her pull off a few upsets over the years if she does make it into the top 50 or so. I'd like to talk about the main event though from this event on the whole, which was the final. It was the best match of the tournament for me. One of the best matches of the season. Barbora Krejcikova beats Iga Swiatek in a final. I mean, Iga Swiatek getting beaten in a final. Oh my God, she was on a streak of 10, of course. She hadn't dropped a set in those 10 finals. She was, looking on fire, 5-1 up in the first set against Krejcikova, and then all of a sudden, Krejcikova gets it back to 5-all. Then, of course, Swiatek manages still to get that set 7-5, and Krejcikova wins the next two sets. It was a great match, and seriously impressive. Damien, I'm just going to take you through a wee bit of the matchup and stuff, and then I'll hear your own thoughts on it. But just a few comments on that. For me, Krejcikova has one of the best games on the tour for neutralising Swiatek's forehand. And the first reason for that would be her favourite serve was the sliding serve out wide in the juice court. It's a great serve that she hits, probably better than most players on the tour. Samsonova maybe is one other player I can think of that hits that serve really well, and maybe Osaka as well. But yeah, Swiatek just couldn't deal with that serve, and it won her so many free points. And in the third set, for example, 21 of 24 first serve points won for Krejcikova. When she hit that serve, Swiatek couldn't do much about it. And staving off the forehand return of Swiatek, that is a massive deal, obviously, for a matchup, because it just means you're in with a chance in every return game, or in every service game, I should say, which is a huge deal. And you can't say the same about most players, basically, that Swiatek's been playing on any surface. The other reason I would say Krejcikova is able to stave off Swiatek's forehand is how well she moves into that juice court, or how well she hits from that juice court, I should say. The forehand in particular, great at redirecting. She doesn't add pace to it so much a lot of the time, but she's just able to sort of massage it into the corners, even off really heavy Swiatek forehands. Even when she's on the defense as well, squash shots from that corner, keeping it low against Swiatek. There's not many players that can do that, and there's a few times in that third set that it won a really important points. It was great to watch, and just such an equipped doubles player. That sort of feel and that sort of finesse coming to the fore in various ways from the baseline, and using it against Swiatek to her advantage. I mean, we saw Swiatek coming into the net loads. That doesn't happen often, and it was 100% because Krejcikova was making Swiatek second guess how to hit through her and how to win points from the baseline, which massive credit to her. It was great. What did you think,
Yeah,
David?
totally agree about the squash shots. Even one of the match points that Świątek saved, I think it was like a second or third. One of these crazy rallies. I think Krejcikova played like 5 or 6 perfect, literally perfect slices on the defense that barely cleared the net. Obviously, Świątek won the point, but it was, if she won the match, it would have been one of the best match point saves ever, honestly. And yeah, the forehand is so effective in defense too.
Yeah,
In that game where she broke Świątek in the third set, I think she won 2 consecutive points with a short angled forehand pass. And you could probably critique Świątek for going
yeah,
there, approaching to that wing twice in a row, especially. But these are still low percentage shots, and Krejcikova just makes them she just makes them like it's nothing. In general, I think there's just nothing like when it comes to all aspects of tennis, you would struggle to find anything that Krejcikova is not competent in. She's just probably one of the most versatile players on the tour.
yeah.
I'd really struggle to find anyone else. And it's also very possible that we saw the battle of the best two forehands on the circuit. Maybe not necessarily in terms of raw power. You'd have women like Osaka there, of course, but in terms of the amount of things that they can do, the shots in the book that they have with them, it's really, yeah, it really made it a fabulous watch. And I think that it was still a little surprising to me because Krejcikova doesn't really fit the type of opponents that Swiatek usually struggles with, like uh, I guess the women that
Hmm.
serve extremely well and can just really demolish her return. Demolish her on return, just expose that weaker serve. So like Alexandrova in the semis, who was the better player most of the match, I think, and gave her a lot of trouble. Like Ostapenko earlier this year. This is who usually Swiatek usually Garcia, of course, is the prime example. This is who Swiatek usually struggles against. Krejcikova doesn't really fit that mold, but I totally agree that the serve was a big aspect of how she won it because yeah, in the third set it was just if the first if the first serve was in, that the point was over, and it was very hard for Swiatek to break back.
Yeah.
Even in that ninth game when she was playing, like whenever the point was on, she was playing some perfect tennis, and yet she couldn't do it because of all the 3 points that Krejcikova was getting.
Yeah.
And you usually don't think of the Czech as, I don't know, one of the biggest servers on the tour, but you could very well argue that she's probably one of the smartest and again most versatile servers on the tour.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd relay that from the baseline as well. Not one of the biggest baseliners in the game, but one of the smartest for sure, because the shot placement and where she puts the ball into the open space a lot of the time, just finding spaces that maybe other players wouldn't, is superb. I'd like to talk about one other aspect of Krejcikova's game, though, before we finish, and that's her ability to deal with pressure, which I've talked about in the past. But again, it's maybe the difference between Krejcikova being close to her top 10 level and maybe not our top 10 level, I guess, because as always, Krejcikova under pressure is like a diamond, honestly. She doesn't break. She was the best at breakpoint conversion, I believe, last year. And this year, obviously, she's gone off the boil a bit with the injury and stuff at the start of the year. But, now that she's finding her feet again, I would highly imagine that she's great on break points again. But yeah, like just to give you a bit more context to that as well, she becomes the third player this year to win in her home country because a lot of players in their home country have been feeling nervy. Jabeur in Tunisia this week. I mean, Swiatek in Poland
Who's that?
and
Barty
Warsaw, for
and
example. It's Marie Buzkova in Prague.
oh right, over Potapova, right? That's a very famous final. I should remember it because of the stat lines, right?
The unforced errors, right? Like
Zero
zero. Is it
winners
not?
for Buskova
Yeah.
and like 40 something unforced errors for Potapova. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right that a lot of
Yeah.
the women have faltered under pressure at home. I think in Swiatek's case, it was more about Garcia just being an awful matchup for her, and also the fact that she was just jumping to clay for a few days only. But Barty, especially,
Yeah, it's
I
fair.
think
Yeah.
The Australian Open was so much tougher for her than the rest of the slams, which is pretty
Yeah.
wild to think about.
Yeah.
But here you had this very
Yeah.
unique. Sorry, I'm a little sick and yeah, yeah. And here you had this very unique situation where Ostrava is basically like 30 or 40 kilometers from the Polish border. So you basically had,
Yeah.
I mean, both were playing at
It was like
home.
50. It was like a Davis Cup or a Billie Jean King Cup tie, right?
Yeah, if it was held in a neutral venue, yeah, like they both played at home simply. So I think I even read that there were a lot more Polish flags. The only regret I have is that I live in the north of Poland. In fact, like almost as north as it can get. So Ostrava is pretty far from me.
Yeah.
I was there in April for the Challenger, but it's a pretty long trip for me.
That's a shame, Damien. Yeah, because it was a great match, of course.
Yeah,
And all credit to Krejcikova. I'm looking to move on to WTA Monastir, if you're ready.
sure.
The Tunisian tournament, of course. Ons Jabeur was probably the star of the tournament. Made the tournament for me because the atmosphere was amazing for her matches. It was incredible to watch in some ways, and it was such a shame when she lost to Claire Liu, and that's what I want to talk about. After starting the week so promisingly against Anne Lee and Evgenia Rudina, she looked like she was rolling in return in particular, really really good in that department, and then just looked super nervy against Liu, who she was double faulting a lot. That was one of the biggest reasons for the loss. Just terrible on break points. Liu was able to convert 6 of 7 break points, which is an absolutely dire break point conversion statistic for her. One matchup advantage for Liu, I would say, is that she's actually got a very underrated heavy second serve, and it maybe stopped Jabeur teeing off in the first ball in return as easily as she would have liked. But really, when it boils down to it, Jabeur should have been winning this match. And in the crunch moments in the third set, she let herself down. I mean, it was 13 winners to 51 unforced errors. Tells quite a lot of the story. It's a shame. Yeah, and before I ask for your opinion on it, Damien, I would just say silver lining. If anybody wants to watch one of the points of the tour this year, go to 5-4, 15-0 in the third set, because you'll see an absolute stunner from Jabeur. It was great. But obviously, went on to lose the match. Such a shame. Do you not think?
Yeah, a huge moment for her, huge moment for Tunisia, I hope also, because we've been getting a lot of info that, in a country that's only really been focused on football mostly, she's getting some amazing TV viewership ratings, that she's getting people to watch tennis just, because of her amazing results. She's also very into that Arab identity, right? That she's she's very happy with whenever she gets one of these records. Which honestly, as someone that doesn't really, I guess in Europe we don't really identify as a part of a geographical region like that we are gonna seek like the first Eastern European player to do something, but we constantly hear about the Jabeur being the first Arab woman to I don't know, make a Grand Slam final at some point and make the top 10, of course. And she's clearly very appreciative of this. She really wants to lead the development of tennis in her country, but also in the whole Arab world, which makes her a fantastic ambassador. And of course, as a person, she's also great, so that helps. So this was definitely a huge moment for her. And yeah, I totally agree that we can just write her down on the list of these players who sort of choked at home. Because this is a draw that she's playing this event because it's at home, right? And this is a draw where most of the players were pretty far from her quality wise. And even if Claire Liu is a nice talent, promising player for sure, this is a draw that Ons Jabeur, we'd expect her to win this event, and she did look super nervy. But hopefully, this event is also a part of Africa gaining more influence on the tennis circuit. Perhaps there's not that much in terms of like potential breakouts that are going to do something in a year or two, but hopefully Africa as a region will simply get more play because of tennis players like Ons Jabeur. There are a couple of younger guys
Yeah.
on the ATP side, like Eliakim Koulibaly from Cote d'Ivoire he has been winning a lot of ITF events. I don't know if he'll turn into something. Honestly, I barely been able to watch him so far. Kololva Monsi has been a pretty interesting guy as well from South Africa. So hopefully all these names. But I guess we're not going to see the full impact of Jabeur until like 10 years in the future, because that's when we'll get the tennis players that were inspired by her. So hopefully, I would love to see more representation of Africa on the tennis circuit, and Jabeur is definitely doing some amazing work in order to make that happen. It's just a shame that she wasn't able to win this event, because especially for the tournament, I think it would have been huge. The media interest there and also around the world, I think, died a bit when Jabeur lost in that quarterfinal.
Yeah, really interesting stuff there, Damien, and totally agree with you. She was so disappointed. Obviously, you could see that in the third set when she went, just ballistic at herself. She was really, really livid. So, yeah, such a shame. I'll talk a little bit about the winner though before we move on to the last event. Elise Mertens able to win her fourth title. Is that her fourth title? Maybe seventh. That's right, isn't it? Seventh title of her career, first title of this year. She'd definitely gone off the boil a bit in terms of form. It had been a while since she'd been able to put together a decent run like this, but she came back in fine fashion, winning matches with 3 breadsticks and 3 bagels, I believe, to add to her own bakery. Iga-esque in some ways, it was great. Yeah, she brought a really, really good level into the tournament, and it's kind of been long overdue. Like, I think Elise Mertens has been playing really, really good tennis, but she's kind of just been getting unstuck by decent players most tournaments, most of the time. She's had her fair share of bad losses, but her level is definitely not, outside of the top 50. She deserves to be at least in the top 50 for sure. So this for me was this was long overdue. Definitely. I don't know if I'm being too kind there, Damon. Do you think she's lost a little bit
No,
of her edge? What do you think?
I think most of the year, besides the slams, because until the U.S. Open, she was still getting round four in every slam, and obviously these are the most important events. You want to peak for them, but it's definitely been a slightly weaker season from her. We haven't really gotten that same sort of consistency that she's gotten us used to. So yeah, glad to see that she's got one, and this should probably help her. Obviously, it's not about the skill set, right? I mean, she's when she's on, when she's confident, she's still that, I don't know, fringe top 20 player or whatever. But yeah, she just hasn't been able.
Yeah.
Besides the slams, she hasn't been really able to pull it together this year. So
We'll leave Elise Mertens alone there. So there wasn't much else to say about her, really. I didn't get to see too much of the match or anything. Yeah, great tournament for her, but I would like to move on to something that's arguably probably a bigger story this week, and that was the ATP event in Astana. I'll move on to the biggest match of the day there. Obviously, Carlos Alcaraz lost in the first round, but I don't want to touch too much on that either. It was maybe uncharacteristic for him, and he could pick up his form, and it wouldn't be that surprising. I want to talk about the newcomer, Luca Nardi, who played a really, really great match against Stefanos Tsitsipas. I have quite a lot written down for this, Damien, but I am going to let you take the reins because I feel like you'll have a lot. You probably know this guy, right?
yeah, I mean, I don't know him personally, but I haven't met him. I haven't seen him live, but I do obviously have a fair bit of knowledge about him and about his game. Well, back in the junior days, he was born in 2003, and there was a while in European junior events where Alcaraz, Rune, and Nardi were like the big three of junior events, so to speak. And I think
Mhm.
there's a very big chance of that happening in the future, not necessarily as a big three of the men's tour, but of that particular birth year. I think Nardi will probably join them in the top 100 at some point. Definitely a very naturally talented guy. Like there's a lot of shot making ability that he has. The thing with him is that up until, and he says it himself, like up until 2 years ago or something like that, he wasn't fully committed to tennis. Like he wasn't sure whether this was going to be his job. I heard from some Italian guys that he wasn't really training that much, and it's only been fairly recently that he started being fully committed, that he started living a life of a pro, let's say, and that has definitely helped him. In the off season, he managed to, well, because last year he was still at that point where he was basically getting, like, he got like 15 Italian challenger wildcards during that year, and I think 10 of them were first round exits. Like he wasn't doing well at all. Then he had a semi at the end of the year, and during the off season he's managed to improve his serve a lot, which really improved his prospects on indoors, which was also where he won a couple of challengers at the beginning of the year, and then also another one on outdoor hardcourts like a month ago. So an absolutely huge year for him already compared to 2021, because I know last year I was even complaining that he should probably he shouldn't be taking these wildcards, just go play ITF events where he's going to have some decent runs and get matches in. But it all ended up working out, because I think mostly because of the progress that he made during the off season. And yeah, seeing that match against Tsitsipas honestly was pretty huge, because he doesn't really have anything that stands out and I think super exceptional. He's just really good at everything. And I didn't
Yeah,
think that against someone like Tsitsipas it was going to work. Not at this point yet. Because I think if Alcaraz and
yeah,
Rune, especially Alcaraz, of course, they are freaks, and because of how much of because of how they are freaks, we don't really talk about Nardi that much. Like the general public doesn't really know him. But if they weren't in the picture, this is the guy
yeah,
we'd all be excited about, I think. And I still didn't think that he quite had the caliber yet to play Tsitsipas so close. So this was great. I think he was very
yeah,
efficient with his serving, with how he was constructing short attacking points without having that power, without having that huge weapon, and also with the shot selection. Definitely a few insane shots as well. I think there was one in the second set tiebreak that like caught everyone's attention. Like maybe it was the first set tiebreak actually. Like a forehand. I'm not sure it was a squash shot actually, but like a
yeah, yeah.
very
I know the one you
low
mean.
low angle on the forehand pass, which was definitely brilliant. And
Yeah,
yeah, very very naturally talented. I think in the future, because he mostly last year he mostly played on clay, but I think in the future the faster conditions will definitely suit him more because of these serve improvements that he made, also because of the fact that he doesn't have that much as the leading shot. Sort of, maybe he develops his forehand in the future into it, but I think for now he really needs that extra bit of pop from the surface to be huge. But seeing him play Tsitsipas so close was definitely very very reassuring about his potential.
yeah, really, really interesting there, Damien. Yeah, loads of potential for the youngest player in the top 200.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what happens for him. From there, I'd like to move on to arguably the match of the tournament, despite it ending in a retirement, was Medvedev and Djokovic. First thing, a little bit of context to this. I'm going to talk about Medvedev's match coming into this, and then a little bit about the matchup, etc. And then I'll ask for your thoughts, Damien. So Medvedev played RBA beforehand, and obviously won 6-1, 6-1. So going into the Djokovic match, I knew he was going to play well. I did do a tweet about this, you may have seen this, Damien, but he hit 3 unforced errors from the baseline against RBA. So if you get rid of forced errors, 3 unforced errors, and he hit 303 other makeable balls. So we're talking a 1 in
I
100
didn't hear that stat.
unforced error
Okay,
rate from the
I didn't
baseline.
hear that stat about the 300 makeable balls. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was insanity. He was playing freakish stuff. Seriously, it was just bizarre. So really, really, really exciting to watch. Won 37 of the 8 baseline exchanges against Batista Agut. Just mad, mad. They're 37-8, I should say. So yeah. Anyway, going into the match against Djokovic, we knew he was going to be playing solid. It's a slow hard court, and on a slow hard court, it's a nightmare for anybody to play Medvedev. I'd argue it's his favourite surface because, to be honest, when he puts his backhand into that sort of just unbreakable wall mode, there's very little anybody in the world can do. It's insane to watch. Against Djokovic in particular, who has one of the best backhands in the game, I would argue Medvedev's in some regards can be better because I think it's more consistent. I mean, it was Djokovic who was making the unforced errors in that wing. 18 backhand unforced errors at the end of the match. Medvedev's was rock solid. And on a court where Djokovic can't hit through Medvedev, it's Medvedev that has all the safest options. Djokovic had to come up with something different. And because of that, we saw him trying slice. Slice doesn't work anywhere near as well against Medvedev as it used to, though. I guess he's trained enough in it. I remember him playing Berrettini at the start of the year in the ATP Cup, and I thought Berrettini might have a chance given that slice, but Medvedev was just able to bunt it back, just as he did in the Djokovic match. The slice didn't force a single error from Medvedev or set up a play. It was just null and void because Medvedev's got such good feel. He's able to keep it low himself off the backhand. It just doesn't work. Maybe to the forehand sometimes, but anyway, slice didn't work. Djokovic was forced to come up with some seriously amazing forehands at times, some serving volleys sporadically, but particularly the drop shots for me were the most important thing at the tail end of the match. It's the most drop shots Djokovic has played against Medvedev per point in their last 6 matches. In the tiebreak in particular, I think there was maybe 3 points that ended because of a drop shot. That was the difference that was made for Djokovic. It was a game changer, and I guess maybe it wasn't the highest margin for him, but he was forced to come up with something different, and he delivered. It was such a high level match. I really really enjoyed it. It was such a shame it ended in a retirement very quickly on that. Medvedev did say apparently if he'd played the rest of the match and he had gone on to win, he wouldn't have played the final. It was that serious. He said playing that set as well might have risked him being out for a half a year rather than a month. He said apparently it's quite a serious adductor injury, so I wouldn't give him too much stick for it. It's not like he does it that often as well. So anyway, yeah, Damien, what was your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, and if you watch back the tiebreak, I think there's a couple of points where you can see his. I mean, I understand they weren't picked up on while the match was going. It's perfectly normal. But if you watch the tiebreak back and you look for it, you're gonna find a couple of signs that something happened. Well, at first that something happened, and then the second sign that something isn't really okay with Medvedev's leg. Anyhow, yeah, the drop shot. I think Djokovic over the years has really tried his best not only to perfect it on the practice court, but also to try to just use it in matches. Sometimes way too much. We've been criticizing him
Yeah,
sometimes for using that drop shot, especially because mostly he has that backhand down the line drop shot, right? This is like 95% of his drop shots are backhand down the line. It's basically the same motion every time, but he does it so well right now, and he's not afraid to use it in pressure moments as well. This was a few years ago, but there was that match against Del Potro, Rome, I think, where he used it on a match point and won it, and won the match, of course. And it
great
was,
match.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was like one of the
yeah,
last great matches of Del Potro, I think. And the backhand drop shot,
yeah,
it was again the backhand drop shot down the line, which is, it should be predictable because it's 95% of his drop shots, but it's still not. It's still executed well enough that it's gonna work. And this is also part of
yeah,
Djokovic and the big three as a whole, just evolving so many aspects of their game. In general, I honestly am not sure if at least in my years of watching tennis, there definitely haven't been many players who have been adding so much to their game, and it's possibly also because of how they have the motivation, they have the desire to be better than the other two. Of course, one of them is gone by now, but
yeah,
that's I think also why Djokovic has changed so much in his game, and the drop shot is a big also a big aspect of that, and the serve as well because it was insane this week, especially in the final and in the semifinal as well. I think in the semifinal because Medvedev was pretty much the better player throughout the two sets up until the tiebreak, I would say. So the serve was really part of why Djokovic was able to keep himself in there. And we've been saying this for years, but when the best returner in the game becomes like a top five server, if that's fair, that's, how do you beat this guy? How do you actually even try?
yeah,
And at the same time, obviously, he's one of the best baseliners, perhaps the best. I mean, probably the best, maybe alongside Medvedev and Nadal. So how do you even find the recipe? And yeah, this also shows how well Medvedev was playing up until that injury, because I think maybe you could even argue that this was his best tournament of the year. Like obviously the Australian Open up until leading Nadal, but there were a couple of poor moments in there as well. There
yeah,
were a couple of matches where he looked shaky. Ojar Yassim, Cressy, and you could even, I think, argue that in Astana his level was more consistent and like higher as when we look at the whole tournament. So yeah, again, it's a huge shame that it ended like that without
yeah.
a classic third set, because this really could have been their best match. I don't know. Did they have any like epics? There was that ATP Cup match, but was it that epic?
ATP Cup, yeah, 2020.
One
That was
set was lopsided, then it was really good. Yeah,
actually there's two sets of about the same quality.
yeah,
Yeah, you're probably right. And you're right, it's such a shame. I loved seeing Djokovic's reaction afterwards. He literally was like,
yeah.
he was getting so pumped. He was like, I'm so up for this third set. And then when Medvedev walked up to him, he looked like, Are you kidding? Are you kidding me, man? Like, we're about to play one of the matches of the season. It was literally just a reaction like, I do not care that I've won right now. I'm actually genuinely gutted I don't get to experience the fight. It was a really nice moment. I really liked it in some ways, even though obviously it was bitter at the same time, bittersweet. So yeah, no, it was really nice for me. Yeah, a little bit. Oh, this I'm not going to talk about this anywhere near as much as the Medvedev match because it was so good. But just touching on the top 5 server being the best returner in the world, Tsitsipas in the final. Oh my God! Like it was just like we didn't learn anything about either player that we didn't already know. Like it was just as predictable as it gets. Basically, Tsitsipas could barely win a point on return. Djokovic gets 2 breaks of serve, 1 in each set. It's his third 6-3, 6-4 win over Tsitsipas in a final, incidentally. Yeah, he just had nothing he could hurt Djokovic with, basically. And it drops to Love 9 and 500 finals. But I think it was yourself, or maybe it was Vance, anyway, was talking about that Love 9 record. It's not quite as bad as people think it is. But yeah, the third lost 6-3, 6-4, lost to Djokovic in a final. That is as telling as you might think. It just Tsitsipas has no answers against him in a hard court.
Yeah, I doubt it's really in his head, because do you really, as Stefanos Tsitsipas, do you really care if it's a 500 or 250? Like, when you're playing a final, does that really matter? Like, I doubt this is a record. If he was
Not at all.
0-9 in finals overall, or even, I don't know, at the Masters 1000 level, but without getting a slam first, well, which is what Tsitsipas has, but if it wasn't 0-9 record, of course, in slams, that would have been huge. But 0-9 at ATP 500s, and as he said, I think it was Vanch who tweeted like the list of the opponents he lost to, and it's like Djokovic, Nadal, Zverev team. I can't remember who else, but it's just a short list of amazing players that have lived in the past 5 years. So it's really nothing to think
Yeah.
about. But as you said, it wasn't really, it was a no contest, and it's a bit of a shame. But yeah, as you said, we expected it, and it's clear that Djokovic is super hungry for this, both here and in Tel Aviv. The way he's also playing so
Yeah.
aggressively the past 2 weeks, it's clear that he's extra motivated, and
Yeah.
it makes sense, because as I think I said like 30 or 40 minutes ago, he hasn't been able to play so many events this year, so the ones he actually gets to play, he cherishes these occasions. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, last thing I'll touch on, I guess, is how well he does do normally at the end of the season. But yeah, this season in particular, obviously you'll have a point to prove, having played so little this year. But this was obviously the second event. I forgot to mention that the second event that he played with Medvedev in the draw, the French Open being the other one. So first chance for ages to play a match that he really revelled on a hard court. But yeah, post US Open in general, Djokovic is the star player. Over the course of the last 10 years after the US Open, he's amassed a 151 win to 18 loss record. 21 titles in that time, 89% win rate compared to 86% elsewhere. It's outstanding. And obviously Beijing, for example, comes to mind where
yeah, he had a crazy win streak in China in general at some point. I can't remember how long it got. It was like 20 something when Federer beat him in Shanghai 2014, but he was at 20 or 30 maybe even. Something like that, yeah. So China obviously back then was a big part of the swing post US Open. Then I don't think he ever really played Basel or Vienna that much, right? So, but at Paris Masters he has a few titles as well, and of course the ATP finals 5, right? I think he's 5.
Yeah, 5. Yeah,
because he
he's
didn't
not
add
matched
one
Federer
last year.
yet.
Yeah, he's
Obviously hasn't done
still
quite as
seeking
well.
for that 6th, and he's gotten close a few times, but he hasn't added it yet. Yeah.
7 years with an ATP Finals title is kind of wild, but yeah, that's how long it's been. So if he was going to win it any year, for me, this would be it. He just looks hungry as he ever has, and he'll be very keen to win a big event, before the year's up. So I imagine he'll come out all guns blazing there.
And who's going to challenge him? I mean, honestly, the only guy that's in this form of Djokovic with this level of motivation, honestly, Medvedev is the only option, and we'll see how he is physically. I mean, Alcaraz, you could argue, but I think it's he's still a pretty sizable underdog for me against Djokovic indoor hard best of 3. So yeah, I think it's really just Medvedev.
Yeah, I think it depends how the course are playing. Honestly, I think Alcaraz on a fast hard court, and this is what I was saying to Owen again. I think Alcaraz on a fast hard court would have a very, very good chance against Djokovic. I honestly think he would take that matchup, and in Australia, if he's playing his best, it could be an incredible, incredible match if we see those two play. I would expect 5 sets every time. I think Alcaraz playing offensively on a fast hard court is just, it's unplayable.
We just saw this match against David Goffin.
Exactly, 60.
It wasn't exactly unplayable. But no, I agree. And Turin last year was extremely fast, I think. I remember some players were even complaining about it. So that would a little bit, that would be a dent in Medvedev's chances, but definitely some help for Alcaraz.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see what happens. But yeah, at the moment, all the advantages are in Djokovic's court. I would like to finish up there, Damien, as we're running the clock here, and I think we've covered as much as we can this week. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk to you, Damien.
Likewise.
If you could do me a favour, listeners, and like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, please give it a go. If you want to catch any of Damien's work, you can go to @DamianKust on Twitter. You can catch my work at @ontheline_Jack on Twitter. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Cheers, guys.